Raytheon poured $1 billion into a plane so revolutionary that pilots were terrified to fly it. Almost every buyer walked away. The Federal Aviation Administration demanded extra composite layers for safety, adding 1,500 pounds of dead weight and wrecking the aircraft's promised performance before it ever flew. In the end, 46 advanced aircraft were smashed to pieces. Just 5 survive, and they are maintained only by the few people who understand their secrets. How did the most ambitious aircraft in business aviation end up as the world's costliest disaster? Burt Rutan's fingerprints are all over the Starship's radical shape. At a glance, nothing about this aircraft looked familiar. Instead of a standard tail, the Starship wore a pair of upturned winglets at the tips and a canard, a small forward wing, near the nose. That canard was not fixed either. It could sweep forward and back in flight, automatically shifting to keep the aircraft balanced as flaps deployed. The result was a design that made stalls, the bane of pilots everywhere, almost impossible. Instead of pulling air with propellers up front, the Starship pushed itself through the sky with 2 powerful Pratt & Whitney PT-6A turboprops mounted behind the wings. These 5-bladed propellers spun in the slipstream, far from the cabin, making for a quieter ride and cleaner airflow over the wings. The engine's placement, close together at the rear, improved handling if one failed, an unusual safety bonus. But the real breakthrough was the airframe itself. Every major structure, including the fuselage, wings, and control surfaces, was built from advanced composites, not aluminum. Layers of carbon fiber and epoxy resin, baked under pressure, formed a shell that was lighter and stronger than metal. This was not just a technical experiment. The Starship became the first pressurized all-composite business aircraft ever certified by the FAA. Rutan and his team believed these materials would unlock a new era of efficiency and performance, letting the Starship outpace anything in its class. No other business aircraft had ever combined a variable geometry canard, pusher props, and a full composite structure. On paper, it was a revolution in flight. Certification brought the first major blow. The FAA, facing an aircraft built almost entirely from composites, pushed for extra layers of carbon fiber throughout the airframe. Regulators wanted a safety margin for the unknowns of this new material. No one had ever certified a pressurized all-composite business plane before. Every ounce added in the name of caution came at a cost. Weight numbers moved dramatically. The Starship's empty weight ballooned to 10,085 pounds, shattering the original target of 8,500 pounds. That is an extra 1,585 pounds, more than the weight of a fully loaded compact car, built into the structure before a single passenger or a drop of fuel was added. For an aircraft designed around efficiency, this was a devastating setback. The promise of a light, nimble business flyer faded as each new composite layer went in. Engineers watched as the numbers on their performance charts slipped further from reach. The Starship, once imagined as a leap forward in weight savings, left the factory heavier than many of its conventional rivals. The FAA's caution was understandable, but the price was steep. Every pound spelled trouble for range, speed, and operating costs, setting off a chain reaction that would haunt the Starship for the rest of its short commercial life. Operators ran the numbers and found themselves staring at a reality that did not match the hype. Beechcraft promised a business aircraft that would cruise at 385 miles per hour and cover 1,800 miles without stopping. What they got was a plane that topped out at 335 miles per hour, 50 miles an hour slower than the brochures, and needed fuel after just 1,350 miles. The Starship's range forced extra stops, burning time and money on routes its rivals could fly non-stop. The price tag only deepened the disappointment. At $3.9 million, the Starship cost more than a Cessna Citation 5, a jet that could fly faster, higher, and farther. Even the Piper Cheyenne, a turboprop, was $1 million cheaper and still outpaced the Starship. The King Air, Beechcraft's own stalwart, delivered similar speed and range for much less. Operating costs pushed the Starship further out of reach. Fuel burn, maintenance, and insurance combined to drive expenses 45% higher than what buyers had been told to expect. Insurance companies, wary of the composite structure and new technology, charged triple the premiums of conventional aircraft. Pilots and fleet managers, used to reliable metal planes and familiar cockpits, saw little reason to pay more for less. The Starship's numbers simply could not compete, and no amount of futuristic design could overcome the cold math of the marketplace. Pilots stepping into the Starship's cockpit in 1989 found themselves surrounded by technology they had never seen outside a simulator. The Rockwell Collins Proline 4 glass cockpit replaced familiar round dials with glowing digital screens. For many, this was not progress, it was a leap into the unknown. Long-time turboprop captains, used to mechanical gauges, faced a steep learning curve. Training costs soared past $100,000 per pilot, a figure that made even the biggest charter operators hesitate. With every new hire or crew rotation, the bill grew, eating into any hope of profit. But the cockpit was just the beginning. On the factory floor, engineers and mechanics found themselves locked in a constant struggle with the Starship's advanced materials. Composite curing required perfect temperature and humidity to avoid problems. Even a small slip could cause delamination, where layers peeled apart and compromised the structure. Each defect meant hours of rework and sometimes scrapping entire sections. Wing attachment points, the most stressed part of the airframe, had to be redesigned 5 times before the FAA signed off. By the time certification was complete, engineers had logged 89 separate modifications, each one adding cost, delay, and risk. These technical hurdles did not just slow production, they drove up every aspect of ownership. Insurers, wary of the unfamiliar composites and electronics, charged triple the premiums of conventional aircraft. Maintenance and operating costs ended up 45% higher than promised. For buyers, the Starship was no longer a futuristic bargain. It was a financial gamble few were willing to take. Beechcraft's sales team managed to convince just 11 buyers to take a Starship home. The remaining 42 aircraft sat unsold, a warehouse full of futuristic planes that nobody wanted to own outright. Raytheon, left with millions tied up in unused inventory, turned to leasing as a last resort. The company rolled out a deal that seemed impossible to refuse: affordable monthly payments and a promise of free maintenance for every leased Starship. On paper, this was a lifeline. In practice, it became a runaway expense. The free maintenance program alone drained $18 million from Raytheon's accounts each year. Lessees, shielded from repair costs, had little reason to hold back on upgrades or push for repairs. Every new issue or improvement request went straight to Raytheon's tab. Some operators even treated the program as an opportunity to experiment, requesting modifications and enhancements that would never have passed muster if they were footing the bill. Instead of building loyalty, the lease strategy created a financial sinkhole, with costs spiraling far beyond what Raytheon had budgeted. The company now faced a hard truth: every Starship in the field was an open-ended liability, not an asset. In 2003, Raytheon delivered its final verdict on the Starship. Letters arrived at hangars across the country with a simple offer: $50,000 for each aircraft, no questions asked if the owner agreed to hand over the keys. For many, it was an easy decision. The planes had become expensive to operate and nearly impossible to insure. Support costs had ballooned, and the promise of free maintenance had vanished. Raytheon's accountants calculated that keeping the fleet alive would bleed millions more each year. The company moved quickly, arranging for the returned aircraft to be shipped to storage lots and dismantling yards. Mechanics stripped each Starship of anything reusable. What remained, fuselages, wings, and canards, met their end under sledgehammers and heavy machinery. No part was spared, not even the composite shells that had once been the pride of Wichita. In total, 46 aircraft were reduced to scrap. The numbers on Raytheon's ledger told the story: $300 million to develop, $350 million lost in production, $250 million on the buyback, and $100 million to support and destroy the fleet. Over $1 billion spent, and almost nothing left to show for it except 5 survivors and a cautionary tale written in carbon fiber and broken dreams. Today, nearly every modern airliner relies on the composite technology the Starship pioneered, and few remember the price of being first. Innovation still demands risk, but history rarely spares those ahead of their time. The lesson echoes in every hangar:
timing can be as unforgiving as gravity. What do you think?